feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Hey everyone, I'm Mark Scribner, co-host with Micah Keel. Here today, I'm in my Boston studio and he's in his Sarasota studio. Today we're going to bring on Mark and Elli Baldwin from Sunways Assisted Living Concierge. Really cool company that is doing some great stuff in the assisted living space. Obviously, there's a lot out there in the news about that space, so we're going to try to peel back that business a little bit and learn what they're doing and how they're going to take advantage of some of this opportunity that COVID has presented. We'd like to remind all our listeners that you can catch this show, all our previous shows on shrimptank.com/Boston. We are nationally syndicated through iHeartRadio. You can download this show from all your favorite places that you get your podcasts: Google, Apple, Stitch, SoundCloud, and Spotify. The tagline of the show is where book smarts and street smarts collide. Now, we always kind of kid around here that we don't ever suggest not to get an MBA or get that college degree. But there's a lot of different ways to build a business, to get an education and entrepreneurship. And that's what we do here at the Shrimp Tank, is we bring the brightest and the best that are doing some really cool businesses. And it's the part of our job that we love the most, because we get to get inside, open the commode and get some good information on some businesses. And hopefully at the end of the day, give you something that you can take away to make you better at your business, make you be a better entrepreneur. So with that said, Mark and Elli, thanks so much for coming on the show today. We appreciate having you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's interesting, Mark. You and Elli, you guys came up with this business kind of like many entrepreneurs out of a necessity of seeing, hey, a real need in the community for this. Kind of tell us about the journey of how Sunways Assisted Living Concierge was created. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So Elli and I both combined have almost 30 years of experience in the IT recruiting world, just to kind of take it back for a second. And then about 8 years ago, I would say 8.5, my grandmother had a stroke and my parents were kind of forced into the caregiver role overnight, which happens all the time. And there was not a service there for them to, that handled the whole situation. There's senior placement services, there's elder care lawyers, there's move managers, etc. But there was not that one central service that kind of you could just lean on and would handle the whole situation. So about 2.5 years ago, Elli and I had been wanting to get into business, for ourselves. And we really are passionate about helping people. We're passionate about our local community. And to be honest with you, we were sitting at happy hour and it kind of just came up like, hey, my parents went through this. They didn't have this centralized kind of company to help them through this process. Let's create a company that we not only help our families, caregivers, loved ones find the senior housing communities, which one is best for them. But let's also be more of a concierge to where it's a one-stop shop. We can have local partners that are elder care lawyers. We can have local partners that are in-home healthcare providers. We can kind of connect all the dots.
Right.
And there, Sunways Assisted Living Concierge was born.
Yeah, essentially the service we wish we had when we were a family.
Exactly.
For sure.
Right.
That's pretty valuable, because that's a lot of how many businesses start out that way. It's they
Yes.
are consumers of an experience. They realize it's not being done the right way, and then the light bulbs go off. But obviously the difference is entrepreneurs act on it, just like inventors have great ideas, but not a lot of people follow it through. What sounds really cool about your business, though, is oftentimes Mike and I in our practices, we'll deal with clients that have a facility that they're working with, but you're not conflicted because you're able to
Exactly.
Not represent one particular facility, and you get to be an impartial advocate for your population, your clients, without having any bias towards a particular facility.
Yep.
No, exactly. And that's one of the best parts of what we do is, one, we're a free service for families. Always. Every part of our service is free for families. And considering, 8 times out of 10, we're usually getting in touch with those families at a time of crisis, or at least, elevated emotional states.
Right.
The fact that we can just be a shoulder to lean on and they're not thinking about costs going along with that is great. But on top of that, we're not biased either because it's essentially standard in the industry for these communities to work with services like ours. And we get paid a referral fee from those communities once somebody moves in.
Right.
So we're just able to share information. I mean, that's our job. Mark and I refer to it all the time as just we're information brokers, essentially. Our job is to collect information not only about these communities and care, et cetera, but also just about the senior living industry and all the resources that are out there and connecting those dots.
Bring all the facts to the table and help our families and caregivers kind of sort through the facts and help them make the best decision.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times we get asked, what's your favorite community? What's your favorite, senior housing community? And, we always say beauty's in the eye of the beholder. It depends on what you're looking for, so we just try to bring the facts to the table, help them make the best decision for the family. And when we're doing that, we're there, just as a shoulder to lean on. We have 15, 20-minute phone calls with families, and it's just we all cry together, and say, hey, we'll talk to you Friday. We're going to get through this together. Some of our clients just need to know that there's someone there that they can count on to get answers.
Yeah, and a common theme you'll see on our show with all our previous guests, and we encourage you to go back and look, but the most successful entrepreneurs that we ever get to speak with always emphasize the caring about the client.
Yes.
And I think, Micah, you hopefully would agree, but that's one of the most valuable things as an entrepreneur. You got to be super dialed into caring about the end user of the product, and it shows in that way.
And that's exactly, and that's above everything else, and something that is at the heart of what we do, even to a point where we still get questioned on a daily basis about our business model because of that. Because a lot of what we just talked about this full concierge service, right? About making introductions and recommendations to other resources and project managing. We don't get paid for that. The only way that we monetize as a business is when we help a family or a senior move into a community. But we have a lot of service behind that. But that's been important to us and part of our business model from day one, because that's what we needed. And that's what we know families need. And we believe in karma. We understand that the more good that we do, the better service we put out there, that everybody that works with us, even if it is just a 15-minute call to make a recommendation or crying on our shoulder, well, they're telling their neighbor who also needs us about that interaction, right? You have walking billboards for you. So that's been important to us from day one. So we totally agree with that.
People need help.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, especially with, families being all over the country and then their parents being, here in Florida, it's very comforting to know that your mom and dad are in good hands and someone's looking out for them and directing them. Because frankly, when you're, busy with your own family, it's hard to stop everything and do the research.
Absolutely.
Keeping adult children that are spread out around the country is a big part of our job, keeping everybody in the loop, getting all of the different entities the information that they need. It's actually been interesting with COVID and everybody now being familiar with using Zoom, including us, but also everybody, seniors, their family members, everyone, of how many times a week that we jump on calls like this with maybe 3 different adult children in the family of like, let's have a powwow and figure out what, the game plan is with mom and dad. So it actually has worked out technology in our favor in that way.
It has. And, obviously we'd like to be in person, but at least with Zoom, there's some you can kind of create a relationship, create a trust, if you will. It's better than just a phone call.
Yeah.
I agree. And, I would add, everybody's an expert epidemiologist these days too. So,
right.
So when do you suggest, because again, in our real jobs, our day jobs, we get to handle or hear about this issue mostly from the financial side because the implications are tremendous. But when do you suggest that folks really start this process? Obviously, I would think the preference would be not, if it's like a triage or a super fast situation, but what's your ideal suggestion of when all these chips should kind of be figured out?
Well, and I'll let Elli handle most of this, but we are huge on education. right? Kind of like you just alluded to. Let's get the ducks in a row now before it's a crisis situation.
Right.
So, I mean, and I'll let you take over in a second, but to kind of answer your question, as soon as there's signs, we need to make sure that there's a plan in play for when it may, because 9 times out of 10, it's going to become a crisis situation before you actually make the move. At least have your ducks in a row before it is that crisis
And those
situation.
Conversations, yeah.
I mean, in a perfect world, that's happening even earlier before you're seeing signs. As far as the financial piece, we can't tell you how many times where something does happen and it's like, how much does it cost a month? They have no idea how much it costs a month, and how are we going to afford that? So the financial piece should start, I'd even say probably in your 50s and 60s as far as the long-term care insurance, those types of pieces.
Right.
I was going to say that's a good infomercial for sign up for your long-term care policies now.
Yeah,
Right.
no, absolutely. And I mean, like you had alluded to, I mean, I think a majority of people that are listening to this podcast are probably in their 30s through 60s, right? And are interested in still starting new businesses and the entrepreneurship journey. So they're probably the adult children that we're alluding to, right? And so essentially it's today having conversations, and those conversations could literally just be like, hey, mom and dad, do you have long-term care insurance? Hey, is there savings accounts? Are there things like, out of curiosity, do you have a will? Just starting to poke a little bit, just because those responses are going to give you more insight into, I mean, if the response is, yep, we have a will, and yes, we have, you're going to know, okay, at least some pre-planning has been happening. And if you get, no, I've been meaning to do that, it's like, ooh, that's going to be your warning shot. Like, let's start to have more serious conversations, because beyond care, it really is making sure financially you're in a place to be able to pay for these things, that you have a will in place, and, understanding.
It's having those uncomfortable conversations now, or at least starting them.
Right, exactly.
100%. Now, let's if we could maybe focus a little bit on the business aspect of what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's the demographics, I think, are in the next 3 to 5 years, and many millions of people getting into that space, and it's hard to get into these spaces too, which we've seen time and again. But how do you think about, like, when you're designing this business or changes that you're making? Is this something that's scalable? Like, could you replicate like your team and someone else? Because the care factor is amazing, but that doesn't always translate to the rest of the team sometimes, or and it can, but you really are the product if people are engaging in you. So I guess, I'm sorry, long-winded, just curious how you think about like scaling this is either a national plan. I know you're based in Florida, but I know that I have clients that are in, sorry, the doorbell rang, have clients that are here in New England, but they have family members that live in Florida.
Yeah.
It is scalable. Talk to us in about a year and a half. But we're having conversations as we speak daily about that, what that's going to look like, et cetera. You make a good point, because as of now, Sunways is just Elli and myself. So Sunways is us. So how do we replicate that? But the long-term goal is to have probably 4 to 6 local Sunways here in the Florida, probably more of the Sun Coast. And
Like
then
branch offices,
excuse me.
Yeah.
Right. And then the long-term plan, I'd say in the next 5 years, is to possibly franchise. The steps to get there, we're still kind of going through that. What kind of positions do we hire? Do we hire, more of us? Do we hire more back office people? Do we hire, a company to do our social media that can take 2 hours a day off our plate, et cetera? So I'm not sure I'm really answering your question exactly the way you want, but those are ongoing conversations we're having daily.
No, I think it's a great glimpse into all the things an entrepreneur does. I mean, you're the HR, you're the tech, you're the social media people, you're all hands on deck in the beginning to figure those pieces out. But I think that's valuable.
Exactly. Our business meetings are usually 3 times a week over a bottle of wine.
Yeah, exactly.
Put the kids to bed.
Yes, that is the good thing that we joke about all the time. And like we're going to have a quick staff meeting and get back to you. There's not a lot of red tape to get through, so that's the benefit of the stage of growth that we're at right now. We understand that will change, but like Mark said, I mean, I think that on the short term game plan, at least for us, is probably hiring, is taking some of the hats, things that we don't like doing and we know that aren't our strengths, and filling in those hires first, so that we can continue to do things that we love and also take advantage of our strengths. But then as things progress and as we're hiring for new offices, et cetera, obviously scaling from a sales perspective. But it's interesting that, and this kind of takes your question onto another tangent, but it's been so interesting that us coming from a recruiting background, right? Mark alluded to that in our backstory, that we both come from technology recruiting. And our experience in that space has helped us so much on so many different levels. One, because our job was working with startups and also to large businesses, and understanding their hiring strategy and scaling and seeing things that worked really well and things that did not work very well, and understanding how to retain staff and also hire staff and good employees. So that helps. And then just also our skill set day to day too, because instead of bringing two sides together of somebody looking for a job and a company that's hiring, we are finding, a community that has an opening and finding a family that needs that care, right? So it's the same relationship building, it's the same actual workflow, just a completely different industry. And the reason why I bring that up is just because I think that it is scalable from a standpoint of, we've been able to jump into this industry so quickly and ramp up ourselves. And I mean, there's something to be said for our personality to do that, but as long as you're hiring and really attracting the right mindset and intangibles, that plugging them into the system, I think, is doable.
Which finding the right person, I think, is going to be the tough part, which is what keeps us up at night.
Right. Always.
The old adage, I'm not looking for a job, I'm looking for a career. And especially in this industry, not only do we want that mindset, but you have to be so empathetic. You have to be a certain type of person to be in this industry. I mean, it's heavy. I can't tell you how many times at our meetings over a bottle of wine, we're crying, like talking about one of our clients. Like it's heavy stuff.
Right.
Yep. It's nice that you care so deeply about that. And how is it working with your spouse? I mean, you can't fire each other, right? So how does that work?
This is recorded. I can hold this against
We both have our strengths. So we kind of stay in our lane that way. I always joke that she's a better talker, I'm a better listener. And there's some truth to that. But even going back to the recruiting, we worked together for the past, 13 years. So to be honest with you, it's easy. I mean, the only hard part is getting that alone time, hey, it's Wednesday. Why don't you, go grab dinner with your girlfriends? Or, hey, Mark, go have a beer, go have happy hour and get out of the house for a couple hours.
Or turn it off like the middle of the night. You're like, I have a Post-it note on your forehead. Let's that type of thing. Micah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. As a husband and wife team, how do you turn it off and make sure you're balancing everything with your, family responsibilities? How do you do that?
When we figure that out, we'll let you know.
Yeah, right. I mean,
it's tough.
It is tough. I mean, I think it obviously helps that, and we talk about this all the time. I mean, I almost think that it's easier that as spouses, we're doing this together, because when it is 9 o'clock at night on a Friday and we're having this conversation, we both want to be having this conversation. Yeah. Whereas if I was starting this business myself, or Mark, vice versa, and he's coming home to a spouse that is doing something else or has been home all day and is like, all right, let's talk about this or that. And then be like, well, let me just unload all of these things and they're like, well, I'm not there. Like, don't bring work home with you, So it's, I don't know. You can see it both ways. For us, it actually helps us because we're like paddling in the same boat.
But 100%. But on the same side of that, it is tough because I can't tell you how many times we're sitting on the beach at 3 o'clock on a Saturday with the kids, and we get a call and we've got to pack up and go home because a family needs their father to move into a community on Monday. So we need to get right to work. So the kids suffer a little bit. Obviously we try to make it up to them, but being a young company, being just the two of us, you know, we kind of have that mentality, you know, we have to do what we have to do. Sickness doesn't take weekends or holidays, you know, so it's what we chose. So, you know, people need help.
Yeah.
That's good. What's one of the biggest challenges you're having to deal with the, you know, dealing with the COVID? What challenges has that created for you, and how are you working around those?
The obvious thing would be the face-to-face contact. I mean, we pride ourselves on if our clients, our families want us to, we actually either pick them up or meet them at these communities, walk them through, make sure they're asking the right questions. If they're not, we're asking the right questions. And we enjoy that. You know, you actually get to meet people, form relationships. You know, it's kind of a joke in the industry. You know, you have thousands of grandparents. That's what we miss the most. I mean, like I said, the Zoom kind of, you know, helps out a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I'd say
yeah, I mean, and I'd say that the hardest thing for us to really, that we've had to navigate is the fact that, you know, as much as communities are still, they're still moving in new residents. I'd say, you know, 80% of communities are still allowing new residents to move in. They're not doing tours, you know, and there's no visitation once somebody moves in right now. So the hardest thing for us to navigate is really, one, getting the right information to our families to make those decisions, because a lot of it is like a virtual tour. It's like a video, and doing Zooms with people at the community to better understand it. But that can only go so far, right? And then on top of it, helping them navigate just the emotional piece of, you know, mom's moving in and I don't know if I'm going to see her next week or in 2021 or what that looks like. So that's been the hardest thing for us to, I guess, to kind of work through. But as Mark said, I mean, we've actually been busier through COVID than we ever have, because our service is needed even more than it ever has, because again, families can't go in. They need somebody to lean on even more so. And so it's just a matter of just taking one step at a time and just kind of going with the flow.
I can't tell you how many families we're working with right now that luckily they have their ducks in a row. In the past 3 or 4 months, you know, we've been helping them weed out, you know, narrow down the communities that they want their loved one to go into once visitation is allowed, once they can actually tour the community. I mean, how do you expect someone to move into a community without physically being able to see where their loved one's going to be? I mean, that's tough. And it doesn't happen unless, and it has been happening quite a bit, you know, the care is needed now. You know, Dan be COVID, my loved one needs help now. So.
Right.
Yeah, you know, Mike and I have a kind of offline, we'll say, you know, we're Mandarin service with FedEx efficiency. Like we look at other businesses that are out there to try to, you know, find the best parts of those businesses that we think could be valuable in our businesses, our respective businesses. Do you folks have like, you know, somebody that you look up to or a company and say, hey, they've got it figured out? Like, you know, a lot of people will say like Amazon, you know, the efficiency, the emails and all that stuff. But is there anybody out there from your space right now that you'd say, like, this is really cool, like this is the stuff that we should be doing or could be doing?
Oh.
I was not industry specific, no.
No. And
to be honest with you, I don't want to come off as, you know, having a big head or something like that, but we're kind of blazing our own trail, to be honest with you.
Right. And really wanting to. And honestly, like, also going back to, you know, our story, I mean, I think that that's a big reason why the fact that we created this service based on seeing the need, because it's what we went through as a family. We approach how we're scaling the business, our services in the business, how we conduct every interaction that we have, and that what did we need? Like we come across like as a end user and as a consumer, and we know that there's other people in our space and nobody's doing it the right way. We really don't feel that way.
The way
you know?
we feel.
Yeah. And I mean, that's our own feeling on it. So, but that's exciting to us more so, you know. I think it's us taking a lot of different companies and different industries and piecemealing of, you know, they've really got the public, you know, relations or like the sales piece and how they have their external staff, like they have that down, or they have their technology or their, you know, back office down. So it's really us picking and choosing, but definitely not industry specific.
Perfect answer, what Ellie just said. And I will follow that up with, keep in mind, our industry is maybe 20 years old.
Yeah.
So it's a very young industry.
Yeah. But again, just you're going back through the lens of looking at from your own personal experience of like where the gaps were, where it didn't feel good, and, you know, designing things around that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's very powerful.
Yeah.
So where do you see yourself? I see you mentioned something about maybe in the model franchising the next 3 to 5 years, but where do you see yourself? Like, where's this ultimately going to go? Is it going to be a national plan, or what are your thoughts around that?
The plan is nationwide.
Yeah, I think
Absolutely.
it would be nationwide. And, you know, something actually recently we were having a conversation with some other business owners and having like a similar type conversation of just throwing around different ideas. And one thing that I think is exciting to us is how our role is going to evolve, you know, because we love what we do right this moment. But like you even alluded to before, we also know as we continue to grow, it's not scalable. Like, unfortunately, we can't just like replicate ourselves. We're going to have to build out, and our role is going to change as that happens. But I think both of us are excited for that too. And those challenges and being able to pull on other experiences that we've had to be able to do those things.
And I was going to say, even going back to the scalability piece, we've recently helped families in DC, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Now, we're not there in person like we pride ourselves on, but no one can be there in person right now, right? So we can help. We're nationwide now, in a sense. You know what I mean? Do we have boots on the ground in different states? No, but we can still be a huge help. I mean, we recently came up with a PDF. I think it's a list of 20 questions that you don't hang up with the phone from that community without getting those 20 questions answered. So we can still put tools in the tool belt for our clients, regardless of location.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, the core values of who you are in the culture that you create, I mean, that can carry over to all the new hires and things like that.
Yeah.
Culture's big. Yeah.
No, I think I 100% agree that's, and as we do scale, that's what's going to be the most important thing, is really honing in on making that culture tangible, not just an automatic thing between Mark and I, but actually what those values tangibly are, so that we can make sure that we're building it under that foundation.
That's great. Well, we are really excited for you guys. We love to have pioneers in an area on the show, and you definitely fit the bill for that. So we
thank you.
Much success, and we're happy to have you on the show, and we look forward to seeing you grow.
Yeah, thank you for having us. It's been
thanks
awesome.
for having us.
Well, before you go, I just want to ask for our listeners, what's the best way to get a hold of you? If you want to push that out, it will be in the actual video and the links and all that. But if you could just say how to get a hold of you, would be appreciated.
Absolutely. The best way would be our website, which is www.sunwaysalc.com. And you can reach us directly via email at info@sunwaysalc.com. Then, of course, social media, we're across the board.
Yeah, we're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube,
Pinterest,
LinkedIn, all of the things. So you can, if you search Sunways ALC on any of them, you'll find us.
Essentially, if you're a stressed out caregiver, overwhelmed caregiver, give us a call.
Look for the white flag.
Yeah.
We're coming for you.
And the 2 bottles of wine.
Yes.
All right. Thanks so much. And just concur with Michael. Wish you much success, and we'll look forward to getting an update sometime soon.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you very much.
Thanks for coming on. Take care.
You too.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in a shrimp tank.